in my head, then something was missing, and I saw a big gap in the market, and I see a future in this, which was to create the biggest B2B network online and to bring people together, from all over the world, from all corners of the world, and bring them into one platform that you have different things happening throughout the year without overwhelming anybody, because I always go back to that. Everybody's so busy, they have their daily routines, they have their lives, but I want to be that meeting place where relations are being built with all the providers in the industry. So it's a big B2B network where you have club owners now from all over the world joining. And I want to make it that they don't only represent their own brand, they also represent a country in here. So that's really cool, because now I see, clubs from all over the world, from countries you would never expect that they have Padel. They do have Padel, and it's a way for them to also put themselves on the map and say, hey, Padel is in this country, this is who we are. And it's a whole different market right now again.
Hi everyone, after a long delay, the Padel Podcast is back. As you might know, I have been moving countries. I am, as you can see, I'm quite sunburnt, or sun-kissed, as they say. And also I have a massive scar on my nose. So it has been a pretty tough few days. It is an absolute privilege. And I've got Victoria Pahlett with me. Welcome. You look lovely, as always, Victoria. And I cannot wait to see you in Barcelona. How are you doing?
I'm good, thank you. Thanks a lot for having me, Dennis. Super excited to see you as well. And I know you've been up to a lot, moving countries and everything. So I'm happy that you take the time for me for recording this today.
Look, I would take a lot more time to talk to you anyway, but it's unfortunately it's just through Zoom. But my plan is, now that I'm in the middle of Europe, is that I'm gonna do a lot more live recordings. So I might come and visit you soon, because you've got a lot going on. You're one of the OG European paddle guys. So now here we are. We're going to talk about Padel Relations. We're going to talk about your position in paddle. We're going to talk about what you've been up to lately. But yeah, first question first, as always, how did you get into paddle?
I love that. That's the first question. Then I think for me, I always obviously been in sports. So I've been from tennis from an early age, but I got into paddle because I started working for Playtomic as the first international hire of the company some years back. So that's really how I got into the sport. But I had seen it and I had heard about it and I had played several times before, obviously. Spending a lot of time in Spain growing up, I had come across paddle several times. So yeah, but that's really why I got into the paddle industry later on. Working with paddle was because of Playtomic.
Yeah, I think Playtomic, everyone knows Playtomic, so you don't really have to introduce the app. I think it is a brilliant platform. I think obviously it has its flaws, as everything at the moment in paddle still has its flaws, maybe apart from Padel Relations. But jokes aside, or maybe it's not even a joke, but you know what I mean. So basically, I think Playtomic is a great app to get people together. My really good friend Abel Shalai, he's working on a really exciting project of matchmaking, as well as a lot of my listeners know that Contra Padel, my dear Contra Padel, is also working on a matchmaking solution, and we cannot really say a lot more about it, but please do check these little innovations which are coming out nowadays out, because I think it's really important. But you mentioned a little bit about your sports background, and tennis is a common denominator for a lot of us, but especially so for you and me, because both of us were pretty okay tennis players. I'm absolutely rubbish, I think, nowadays. But tell me about what your sports background is.
Yeah, so I think, Dennis, growing up, I have two older brothers. They were playing as well, but I started playing from such an early age. I think the first time I ever held a racket was actually over here in Marbella on this court, very close to here. And I was like 3 years old. So that's me, 3 years old, learning, how to hold the racket and getting into it. And I think I started competing, when I was 7, 8. I was always top in Sweden. So going after that, it was like clear either to go professional or to go to the US. And since my dad had been a very successful tennis player, he had been like the number one ranked in the US, playing for University of Minnesota. So he always, told me you should definitely go to the US, especially as a girl, you have always like really high chances of getting a full scholarship. So for me, it was the clear path to take and to also get a good degree and a good education for free.
Yeah.
So that's what I did. So I pursued. So I went to Charlotte, to North Carolina, and I played college tennis there for 4 years, and loved it. It was such a great experience, and had 4 really great years playing number one. A lot of pressure, but really great. And I still play. I still try to compete as much as possible. But I play for a team in Luxembourg. I play in a team in Germany as well. So trying to keep up the tennis, but obviously combining it with paddle and combining it with work, it's a lot of things to keep up. So that's why you don't spend, 25, 30 hours on court anymore. But still, the little time I spend, I really enjoy it.
What racket do you use, just out of interest?
Yonex.
Okay. Which one?
Yes. So right now I have the V Core. I always had, different versions of the Yonex, but V Core is my model. So
A bit more nerdy question. Is it the 98 or the 100?
the 100.
100. Power racket. Power racket.
Yeah, the
Yeah.
power rack.
No, I was just actually thinking because you're in Marbella at the moment, and you just mentioned it as well. And my really, really good friend, who's also Swedish, by the way, Jonas Eriksson,
Okay.
the tennis nerd. I don't know if you've heard of him.
No.
You should definitely meet up with him while you're there, because he is the tennis nerd. So I actually thought when I started the whole channel that I'm gonna do like a, because sorry, we used to do a podcast together, a tennis podcast together, and I was co-hosting, or I was like his usual guest on a weekly basis, and he is unbelievable with tennis rackets, and this is a massive shout out to him, because I love him to bits, and he's a great guy, and he is local. So if you ever want to hear, or if you ever want to speak Swedish while you're down there, just let me know, and I'll just
A
hook you.
lot of Swedish people, Dennis, to be honest. I keep hearing Swedish everywhere walking around. I'm like, what happened to this place? But it's, yeah, no, that's awesome.
It's
That,
it's still it's still better than some of the other languages, trust me. So
yeah.
yeah, definitely it's good that a lot of Swedish are down there. But yeah, you said a little bit about your studies, and I wanted to go a little bit deeper into it, because I think it's quite interesting on how you say that you went on a scholarship, and I was toying a little bit with sports management, and my second degree, my second master's is sports management. So I always said to the young kids of Hungary that they should go to the States to pursue their dreams, and I think it's not the end of the line. So it's not
No.
like you go to the States, you play on a scholarship, you get a degree,
Mhm.
and that's it for your tennis career. You just have better options to
Yeah.
pursue later down the line. So I think it's really interesting, on how that is. And you mentioned Charlotte, and I just wanted to ask about, what did you study? How did that go? I mean, obviously being first on the college team is massive, and massive congratulations. And yeah, just tell me more about your studies.
Yeah, I think, going over to the US, tennis, and studying there, I really didn't know at first what I wanted to study. I knew I wanted to do something obviously with a more international approach, because some of the degrees over there are very American focused. So I was thinking maybe law, and stuff, but that's really difficult, because if you don't want to live over in the US after, you really can't use it so much. So for me, it was clear that I wanted to do something as broad as possible, because I love a lot of different things. But that's really what brought me into international business. So I majored in the international business, and my minor was international management. And it was a really cool degree, because you needed certain languages, you needed to speak at least 3 languages, like you needed to also have an internship experience. And being on the team, that was really difficult, but I did find an amazing internship. So, as you say, like one opportunity over in the US leads to another. And I think I was really privileged to be surrounded by great people and great opportunities over there. So, I really had a great time. But, I think you learn so much more, like values as well, and like all the time management. The time management is huge, honestly, because it's something that is hard to explain if you've not experienced it. But waking up, going to the gym, going back home, shower, go to class, go to courts, and you walk a campus that's like a city, and you have to keep managing your time. You go sleep late and you do the same routine again, and you travel for matches, you miss. So it's just really intense. And I think what all college athletes have in common is that they really manage their time. They learn to organize and prioritize. And I think that really carries over into the business life later on. So yeah, so I really had a great experience and a great time. But as you say, one opportunity leads to the next. And that's really what the years in the US was for me.
I think it's really interesting that the college system is so different. I did a bilingual high school, and then my first degree, I don't know why I'm saying it, but my first degree is American Studies, so it
Yeah.
was pretty similar to like a college system in the States. But there's a lot more reading in that sort of way, and I think it's really interesting that you're 19 or 20 and you're already like a project manager.
Yeah.
And that gives such an amazing boost in the professional life that you already know, okay, so this is the first thing which I need to do, then this one, then this one, then this one. Is I think it's great to see this, and it's great to hear that you're definitely a success story. So I think it's one thing is that that you are, as I said, one of the OGs of the pedal world. Uh, but also it's great that you are coming from tennis and you're actually showing that, okay, like you can do this. And I mean, at the moment, there's a lot of comparison between tennis and paddle, isn't it? And I think there's still so much to learn from tennis, but also not learn the bad things. And I think it's really important because we are always saying that, oh yeah, tennis players are getting paid so much more and yada yada yada. And
Mm.
yes, that's true. But I think at the end of the day, their market, like how they could be marketed, uh, is or their marketing value is so much bigger. Like, if you see Federer, Nadal, Djokovic, or like some lower ranked players, even let's say Leo Borg is a pretty marketable someone. So I think it's really interesting to see on where paddle can grow. And if you
Yeah.
look at Tapia, for example, who's the best player in the world, arguably alongside Coelho, um, Tapia isn't really recognized outside of Spain or Argentina. Maybe he would be now recognized in the Middle East. Maybe he would be recognized in Italy, but altogether, and definitely Sweden, by the way. But
Yes.
altogether, I think there's still so much to learn from tennis. But as I say, not the bad things.
Yeah.
How did you actually end up with Playtomic? Because you mentioned that you were the first international hire, and also, I guess the third language what you speak is Spanish then.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. That it's very funny, because I never looked for Playtomic and I didn't know about Playtomic when I started. But it was more like they have some Swedish investors as well. It was a little Swedish vibe of the company, combining it with the Spanish. And yeah, Pablo and Pedro Felix, they reached out and they said, we're looking for somebody to help take Playtomic outside of Spain. And by the time, like, I was really excited because I had gone from the US experience, doing my internship in Las Vegas, and coming over to Europe again. And I was in Luxembourg based there because I also got a job at UBS, which is a Swiss bank. So I literally went, from 25, 30 hours on court to being behind a corporate desk all day. And that's when they reached out and they just said, hey, we're doing this, it's something that maybe would interest you. And I realized right away, like, combining sales, combining it with paddle, and combining it with like taking meetings, and like, it's a dream job, it's something that if you're liking to play and you like to sell, it's just the perfect combination, so for me, I was like, right away, I like the guys a lot as well. So I said, for sure, I'm doing this and we give it a chance. And I didn't know by the time, about the whole management software, about the paddle industry, what was to come, because the truth was, like, moving forward 1 year or so, like, it was popping up clubs like mushrooms everywhere, and it was crazy. Every week it was just more and more people opening, and it was just a wave. So it was an interesting time to join the paddle industry and join especially the management software, because it's something that everybody needs. So that's why you always at least had a chance on talking to these clubs, and you get to know a lot of people, and a lot of people, they do it as a fun project. Like, that's not their main job and that's not their main priority, but they want to have a club. So yeah, it was meeting a lot of interesting people throughout the years as well, working with paddle. So that's really what brought me into to Playtomic, a mix of Swedish and Spanish contacts, really.
Yeah, I think as I said, Playtomic is vital nowadays, and they have such a massive market share as well. They're almost like Yonex in badminton, I think,
Yeah.
at the moment. Um, but I think it is really. There's just a funny story which just popped in my head. Pablo Caro, we were playing with Bebe Auguste and Pablo and it was Roscoe Miller. He was the third, and I was the fourth. So we were on the We Are Paddle opening,
Hmm.
and obviously, as we know now, We Are Paddle Bristol and We Are Paddle Derby is now not owned by Ladap.
Hmm.
But when it opened, it was still Ladap and Mehorset courts and whatnot, and we were playing, and I was just playing for like half a year, so I was literally I didn't have a clue on what I was doing, and I was um, like I was with Roscoe, who's an unbelievable player. By the way, he's absolutely unbelievable, and um, and I was against Pablo and Bebe. So it was quite a matchup. And Pablo hit me in the crown jewels with, with one of the shots. And I'm still waiting for that picture to be sent to me. And I don't know if someone is listening to this and they have that picture, please send it to me because it was an unforgettable moment, B, a pretty embarrassing moment, C, it was I mean, what a court, by the way. What absolutely amazing paddle royalty on one court with me. So I was really
That's
lucky that I
amazing.
had that
Have
experience.
to have to ask for a rematch of that one then.
Oh yeah,
It's
100%. Then I would definitely stand my ground now with a 2.5 years experience and some international matches and whatnot. But I remember that was such an amazing experience in all fronts and I was still trying to get Pablo, and somehow, I mean, we just waved at each other when we crossed paths. But I will definitely try to catch him in Barcelona because it would be quite fun to actually have him on the pod as well because he just came up with partly he just came up with this idea and I think it has been. I mean, look at like the newest investor with Rafa Nadal. Like you cannot really
yeah,
go wrong with that, can you? Um,
absolutely.
so let's go into the deeper stuff. First of all, before I ask about paddle relations, I wanted to pick your brain on why do you think the only negative example of paddle so far has been not, it's not all doom and gloom, but people still talk about Sweden as it
Mhm.
is like this massive downfall of paddle.
Yeah.
Why did that happen? What do you think? Because obviously you had a lot better understanding, and I know why all the courts popped up, but why was it not sustainable?
I think there are so many mixed views on this, Dennis, but in my head, like living it and seeing it firsthand, I think from a perspective, sometimes I'm like, how easy or hard it can be to obtain the permits, like going to the commune, doing all the work, the groundwork, etc. And you just had such a massive interest. Like just to give you an idea, also like during COVID, which was one of some of the years that I did work in the Nordics, those years, like it was the only country that was still open for paddle and allowing paddle to be played among a lot of other sports that were actually not allowed. So it was also contributing to this massive boom of just interest of paddle. So everybody played paddle, everybody bought paddle rackets, everybody was just into the sport. And I think that combined with a lot of people that in Sweden saw an opportunity, I'm going to make some quick money out of this. It was that whole idea that just brought people going to request more and more and more permits. And like to give you an idea, I come from a super small city in Sweden in the south. It's called Växjö. And in the beginning, like when I started at Playtomic working like 6, 7 years ago, there were maybe like 4 courts in the city, grew to 8 courts. But then 2 years later, then it was like over 90 courts in that same city with less than 90,000 people. And it just tells you a little bit like, it went from 4 courts to 8 courts and maybe like 12 courts. But then it was that massive step from 12 courts to 90 courts that you're like, okay, now we're going far beyond what's actually sustainable. So it was just, and that's a small city. Then you think of the big cities, and it was like always like, who has the biggest center? Who has the most courts? And it kept being kind of like in the news, in the media. And I think that's a little bit, it can really hurt the media. It can help a lot, but it can also hurt a lot. And it became this like, who has the biggest center? And some cities that really started like burning, because if you have all of a sudden a center opening with 20 plus courts and the other centers have like 4 courts, 3, 4 courts, it's starting to become competitive in a lot of different ways. And sooner or later, also the big chains started, obviously, as you know, acquiring all the small ones. And when that happens, it also comes a whole different business concept. So there were several things that happened, but overall, it was just crazy the amount of speed and permits that were given out, and the amount of also people wanting to just make quick money and not seeing the sport as a long-term investment for them. I think those three combinations just, it didn't help. It really was, in my opinion, what ruined the whole sport up in the Nordics. That now it's more sustainable, now it's good, now it's like completely under control, I would say. And a lot of people spent too much money and too much time into it, I think. So there were also a lot of people stepping away from it, or they got injured. Because as a tennis player, you can also relate, I think, tennis, but it's like very monotonous. Like you keep using, me, I'm right-handed, and you keep using so much your right side of the body. So a lot of people I knew got injured, or they overhit, or they just didn't use the body in the right way. They had the wrong technique, because as you know, it's not tennis that you need to learn the right technique. You come in and you have to just touch the ball like beach tennis, like it's just get the ball over on the other side. So it's for everybody. That's the great part of the sport as well. But it's the negative, or the downside, in my opinion, is that it's so monotonous. So you keep using the same shoulder, you keep just overusing one side of the body. And in tennis, you don't have that. But in paddle, you have that. So if you're on top, not used to working out, and you start playing a lot, it just, doesn't bring a lot of good. So a lot of people stop playing. Also, it gets more feisty, because every time you go on court, you don't go to practice. Paddle, you always go to play a match. So it's a lot of things that lead to it. But at the end of the day, I think some of these reasons for me, Dennis, was like looking at it firsthand. That's what happened.
Yeah, no, I think it's really interesting, and it's just amazing what you said about the 90 courts in a 90,000 inhabitant city. And it's a really good comparison, because Sweden and Hungary are pretty much the same population, 9.5, 9.6 million, something around that. And obviously you have a lot bigger area, but at the end of the day, it's the same amount of people. And when you said 90, we just about hit 100 courts in the whole of Hungary.
Yeah.
And Hungary is actually a pretty decent nation in terms of like players. Like the top 5, 6 players are almost, let's say FIP silver level.
Yeah.
They can do really well. Obviously, our best female player, Dori Andreski, she's now top 150, I think, top 160 in the world. So that's obviously a massive well done.
Yeah.
But it's just really interesting what you said about this, and I think it just, I mean, first of all, I know I really like how Sweden dealt with the COVID situation, I have to say. But second of all, I mean, oh my God, like paddle where you're literally closed in a cube with everyone else. Like, is that the thing what you can allow? Because like tennis, you're in a massive field, you're like 20 meters away from someone else,
Yes.
and you couldn't play that because of the balls and whatnot. And
Yeah.
paddle, you could. And I'm like, that doesn't really make sense. It's almost
Yeah.
like the same as when they could go back to squash, and I'm like, you're in a room with someone who you don't know. I mean, you obviously know them, but you know what I mean. It's just crazy, isn't it?
It is crazy. It is crazy. But I think it was good, at least for Sweden, that people could stay active. They could do a
Sure.
lot of, like, they kept the social interaction. So it came a lot of good out of it as well. But it was a lot of factors, as you see. I think so, Dennis, because you also have to look at it from both player perspective and club perspective. Some people just look at club perspective. And I think you're missing out the full picture, why? Because it also had a lot of things. A lot of people in my like close circle and stuff, like the amount of money they spent on equipment, on courts, on everything, like it was just going out of hand. And I think that's something that people keep forgetting, that it's not, you can just keep charging forever, and keep increasing prices forever. It doesn't work like that.
Yeah,
So
100%.
also, yeah,
100%. And I think it's really interesting as well because obviously in Sweden you cannot really have outdoor courts. Like you can try maybe in the south, but you
there
will
are
fail
outdoor
miserably.
courts. Yeah, you would be surprised that. And there was also a lot of outdoor courts opening, left and right with snow. People were playing with snow on it. So,
This
yeah.
is not a sport for not fair weather. Let's put it that
Yeah.
way. But
Yeah.
even in Spain, that's the important, like the interesting bit as well. Even in the impeccable weather of like Marbella, you have indoor courts.
Yeah.
And there's a reason for that because obviously this sport is supposed to be played because of the walls, because of the different temperature, humidity kills it, and even if you see when they were playing in Valladolid last year, they had to stop because it was just too hot.
Yeah.
And I think you see all these conditions, and you're like, okay, that's interesting. Why did they stop there? But you sort of understand that the wall reacts differently, the court reacts differently. So yeah, okay. Let's talk about the main thing, Padel Relations. Tell me about it. What it is, how did that came about, and why is it the best thing in paddle right now?
Okay, good question, Dennis. I think for me, Padel Relations, it's a project I absolutely love. It came from the simple idea, I think, that during also my years in Playtomic, I did arrange a lot of international events. So I met a lot of club owners from all over the world. I think we came down to also having the idea that it should be fun to be a club owner and you should feel part of a bigger community because it is a global movement. And I think a lot of the people loved coming to events, and it's something that's a happening, right? So it's something out of your ordinary day. It's a little ad hoc fun happening, something that makes you tick a little bit. So that's one part of the event. And a lot of people kept asking me, hey, Victoria, are you still arranging events? And I kept telling them, no, unfortunately not. COVID really killed that part. So right now, a lot of the event business overall, I think in the world had to put that on the side. So the event side, I love it. So that's one part of it. But the second part of it is like, obviously, I've attended a lot of expos, a lot of summits. And both as a attendee, I think as walking there is like, what am I doing here? But also as the companies that they are buying the booths every year, it becomes a business. And sooner or later, I think you have to ask yourself, what's the added value for me and what do I want out of this expo? And what's the actual visibility for me as a company? Will we make this return on the investments, to put it simple? And I think a lot of companies are struggling because maybe in the beginning it was like once a year, one expo. All of a sudden, you're facing a different paddle industry and a different world where it's great that the sport is growing everywhere. But it's a challenge because you have to maybe you look at this year alone, you have just in the span of 2 months, you have Milan, which was the racket trend. You move to Miami to the Racket X, and now soon is coming up, as you know, then is the World Summit in Barcelona. And I think a lot of people have spent a lot of money on booths and employees and travel costs and hotels and food for every. At the end, it becomes a lot of money. So from my side, since I was in previous positions having to put that money, I know what type of amounts we're talking about. And in my head, I was like, paddle is not just in Spain anymore. I love that there's so much knowledge in Spain. But at the end of the day, me having sold and worked with clubs all over the world, I realized that paddle are at different stages in different countries. And Sweden is in a whole different stage than even Norway or Netherlands or UK. So you have Australia. And I just had people that contacted me again from all over the world saying, hey, in Australia, we're so lonely down here. We're not going to fly over to Miami. We're not going to fly. And I realized the majority of people that's interested in opening or already running a club, they're not going to make these trips for 2 days. So in my head, then something was missing, and I saw a big gap in the market, and I see a future in this, which was to create the biggest B2B network online and to bring people, bless you, but to bring people together, from all over the world, from all corners of the world, and bring them into one platform that you have different things happening throughout the year without overwhelming anybody. Because I always go back to that. Everybody's so busy, they have their daily routines, they have their lives. But I want to be that meetings place where relations are being built with all the providers in the industry. So it's a big B2B network where you have club owners now from all over the world joining. And I want to make it that they don't only represent their own brand, they also represent a country in here. So that's really cool because now I see, clubs from all over the world, from countries you would never expect that they have paddle. They do have paddle, and it's a way for them to also put themselves on the map and say, hey, paddle is in this country. This is who we are. And it's a whole different market right now again. So in the US, you have a lot of money, you have a lot of resources. It's like I say, every state is like a country. So also with the US being on the verge of, coming into the paddle industry more and more, I find it so interesting that you also need the knowledge. What I did find is like inspiration, knowledge sharing across borders. It's super, super helpful, and it's something people really look to. But that's something you don't necessarily do just doing research on your own in a country because it's so competitive. So people are differently willing to collaborate, share, and be part of a network where I think year round you have something that's a resource, not for 2 days that you have an app during these events. You have then the whole list of people and contacts that you can contact throughout the whole year. So you just use it as a resource. But more than anything, I try to keep, the engagement with people, connecting the people I know will work well together, and like just finding new concepts and then it's all fair play in there. So it's just best product wins, best trust and best personality. Everything wins in there at the end of the day, because there's new countries opening, comes new products, it comes new collections, it comes new brands, and stuff I personally have never heard of. All of a sudden they are there and they're willing to make an entrance, so it's also is like a different platform. It's a different way to bring them also up to speed. So that's a little bit what Padel Relations is. It brings venue owners all over the world together with all the companies and brands. And then I've defined 12 different categories that I believe are the company categories to really make this as efficient as possible, with all interesting topics and things that the brands and companies represent.
Yes, really, really exciting, and you showed it last time to me, and I think it's so well done as well. And I think everyone in Padel should be a member of Padel Relations, and I think it's really important to know the benefits of that space. And it's a little, I think you mentioned it that you feel like it's the LinkedIn of Padel, and I think in a way it is, and it's great that it is. And look, at the moment, LinkedIn is like the space for Padel anyway. So like everyone on LinkedIn puts their achievements out, and there's nothing else where you can read there apart from Padel, which is a bit overwhelming, I have to say, because it should be a professional site for professional people, and it shouldn't be success stories of Padel. That's Padel Relations.
Exactly.
So that's why I think what you realized is that this is what I need to fulfill, and you definitely lived up for it, and I think it's great that Padel Relations A is doing really well. B, everyone is talking about it. See, I remember when we met last year in Paris, you were saying that this is your project and this is what you're doing, and look where we are now. It just like sort of it's rapid fire, and I think it's really interesting. You mentioned Australia and New Zealand as well, because I think there's a lot which is happening down there which you don't really know about. I have some contacts from New Zealand, and I hope that I will have quite a few guests from New Zealand, because I think it's Australia and New Zealand are really interesting. We all know about South Africa and what's happening with obviously Seb Brockman and all those guys, and it's really interesting because now he's actually doing combat rackets, which is Manu Martin's brand, and how they built up the whole thing together is really interesting. And I think Padel Relations is much needed. And look, I mean, how you did it is absolutely brilliant. So all the kudos I can give you. I'm obviously I'm all up for that. So just a few more questions before I let you go. But I want to know, because you said that you do play tennis. Obviously, I assume you do play paddle as well. But do you play regularly? And where do you play? Which side?
So I play as much as I can. Dennis, I would say always, going to all the events, all the trips, everything, I always play. So I try, to play as much as I can, as much as the everyday life allows. But I also try, depending on the season with the tennis, I also try because now, for example, the club matches are coming up. So I'm trying to play less and less paddle, even though I played today, for example, because now in Marbella, I know a lot of people and I go and play. But also going to Barcelona, I know I'm going to play, even if it's tennis season for me now. But in Luxembourg, where I live, it's only two clubs and it's not a lot of courts. It's really hard to find times to play. But also, it's very few people that maybe play at a certain level because the sport is so new. So there's many factors to it, but I would love to play more. And I think it really depends where you are, where you live, and at the moment in Luxembourg, it's not just something I do daily, even if I would love to do daily. I don't think that's good for the body, going back to that part. So I think it's just always a good, to find a stable level of different type of sports, like going to the gym, playing tennis, playing paddle. I try to stay as active as possible. But the paddle I love to play, especially with clients or with people, with partners. Everybody I know, Dennis, that play. I'm always up for a game. Everybody knows that. So yeah,
we have to play. So I'll
we
do a
have to.
shotgun
We have to. Yes.
when we see each other because I spoke to Alex Pensetti a couple of weeks ago and he said that the last day of the summit will actually be a leisure day. So it will be like sports gear and paddle rackets and there's gonna be quite a few courts. So it will be utilized and there might be a small competition. So if there's a mixed competition, I would like to play with you.
And we play tennis. You're the first one to ask, so for sure we
There you
play.
go. Get it. So and obviously two ex or current tennis players. Funnily enough, my team championship, national team championship is coming up as well. So I don't know if I can actually still hold a tennis racket. I mean, I can hold it, but I don't know how to use it. But no, I still play every once in a while, which I never thought I will say that tennis is not my first choice of sport anymore.
Yeah.
But it's definitely, funnily enough, it's definitely better on the body than paddle. I do 100% agree. I
It
think
is,
so.
physically you have to cover more, but at the end of the day, just your mobility, it's so different, And I love my backhand, so I use also a lot my left side. So it really is, a lot of people, if they only like forehand, it's maybe they have the similar issue in tennis, but yeah, it's different.
I definitely do. I am a pretty attacking forehand player, and my backhand is a mess.
Yeah,
And even more so because I hit a one-handed, and I could never hit a two-handed, and I wish I could because then that would be a weapon as well. But it's definitely not a weapon for me. It's my serve, so that's why my overheads are quite good in paddle because my serve is my strength. Do you watch the Premier Paddle, by the way? Do you
I
follow it?
do. I do now and then. I don't follow it. I don't watch, like I'm not fanatic of it. I think working with it for many years as well. Like I love watching a good game, but it's not something I follow. So yeah, I like to watch certain matches, certain good matches, but it's also a lot. What I find interesting is a lot of the same people. And it's like, for me, watching paddle, it gets rather like it gets rather kind of like repetitive.
Yeah.
So the point you can just construct to a certain, there's some amazing shots being done at the moment. There's like, you're just fascinated how they do some of these things that they're doing. It's incredible to watch. But just as it coming from tennis, I think tennis, I appreciate more what you can do with a serve, for example, or, what you can do with angles of the court, etc. But in paddle, for me, watching it continuous, like on a weekly basis, I wouldn't because it gets a bit too repetitive for me. But playing it, I love it.
Yeah.
Watching, I love it as well, but just more limited,
Yeah.
not every day.
Three questions. One, what racket do you use in paddle? Two, who's your favorite female and who's your favorite male player?
I use the Adidas rackets always, Dennis. So for many years, I've used Adidas playing paddle, and I really love that racket. So I've always used that. I think I can play with a lot of different paddle rackets. I really don't think it makes such a difference for me. Maybe it's my level, but yeah, I really do enjoy the Adidas. In terms of the favorite players, I would say Gematriai, I like a lot. So as a player, I met her as well. I think she's super friendly, nice person. So very nice. And on the men's side, oh, difficult. I think there's many great players, but I would have to go with Ale Galan on this one, Dennis. Yeah.
Okay, okay. I like both, and I think Triai and Brea, they're absolutely just took the whole competition to a different level on the female side, and I think I mean I predicted it. To be fair, in my predictions for the year, I thought that they're gonna be absolutely amazing, and I think Delphi Brea is she's the Tapia of the women's game. She is just unbelievable what she can do with a paddle racket and a pedal ball. And she was in Alicante last year when there was the senior world champs because her father was playing and they won the whole thing. And I actually had a few words with Silingo, and he was super excited and super happy that he actually achieved his goal, that they won the senior world champs. So that was it. Last question, because I think we're like you are as busy as anyone, and funnily enough, I wanted to ask about US Paddle, but I will have Ryan Redondo today with me as well
Great.
later. So
Mhm.
so Ryan will answer all my questions about US Paddle. You know a lot about US Paddle as well, but I think I will leave that to Ryan so he can he can
Yes. That's
answer
a good.
those.
That's a good.
So how do you see yourself? How do you see Paddle Relations? How do you see Paddle in the next 5 to 10 years? And what? Because obviously I know that you sort of look at your life as a project as well in many ways because you're a project manager, and I say it in the best possible term as as
Yes,
as I
I
can.
know.
So
Yeah.
how do you see your next 5, 10 years and within this space and what could be achieved with Paddle, you reckon?
Tough question, Dennis, because there's so much to come, and I love, I'm also a control. I love to control as much as possible. The future you cannot really control, and I think that's also the charm of it, obviously. But I love to follow now what paddle relations is, what it means to people, and I love to see new markets bring paddle, and actually engage paddle and involve people into sports at the end of the day, because it is a sport that people can play, and it's something that's accessible and that should be as inclusive as possible. So I would love to follow that journey with Pad Relations and just have as many countries represented in the network as possible. So to really see it becoming that global network, that's something that is, for me, it's already a global network, but I want it to be the global network with clubs from all over the world. From every country there is paddle, I want one of them at least represented in Padel Relations. So I think that's a goal, Dennis, from my side. And just, yeah, follow it and see on a professional level where it takes me at the end of the day. Because I think, as you know, paddle opens a lot of doors. You meet a lot of interesting people, and I'm super excited and privileged again to be in the spot I am. So I'm really thankful. It's a lot of hard work also, is to not forget, but it's a mix, it's a mix of working hard and also having a great time. So that's why I think 5, 10 years really difficult to say, but I think paddle will be in really all corners of the world by then. Seeing it develop like it is, like you said, tennis and golf, and you look at all the other sports, like this is going to go to actually become even more of a sport. So that's something I look forward to following and being part of that journey with everybody.
And the plus one just popped in my head because that's one of the questions why I started the whole podcast in the first place, and who better to ask? Why do you think now? Why now? Why what happened 3, 4 years ago apart from COVID? Why now? Paddle, why now?
Paddle why now? I think at a certain point, then it's also, I think people are on like a wellness kind of like getting more. I think there are two factors. One thing is people have less and less time because everybody's more and more busy with the current setup, the current world we live in. I think people are really busy. So you need to kind of find time. And if you look at, for example, business in the past, like you would go play 18 holes of golf or 9 holes of golf and go have lunch after. With paddle, you get the same exact experience, but you get it in a much shorter time. So I think as a social initiative, In business, I think it's great. In personal, I think so as well, because I think you can do it in exchange of bowling. You look at family today, instead of going bowling or going for drinks or whatever, they say, hey, let's go play paddle. And everybody can join, everybody can have a good time. So I think it's just become a social phenomenon that's like people are following and people are liking it. So I think that's why it's now. And you see, again, the impact of media. You have some people that's influential people or figures, in the public eye, that they have tried paddle and then it just becomes a thing. And I think this is now like rooting itself that, again, you don't need to spend 15, 20 hours on private lessons in tennis to get to a certain playing point. You can play 1 hour private lesson. You can still get to actually have a good time. And I think the saving of time, I think it's something that's really interesting in paddle. Why now? Because I think it's just the current society we live in, and you still get the health and well-being and something fun with both a ball and rackets. I think it's something that racket sports have always been attractive, right? But it's something that's really hard. So this is the first time you can enjoy racket sports, but on a more friendly level, on a more welcoming starting phase, let's say.
Yeah, I think just in short, how I would put it, it's the perfect storm. I think it just basically happened at the right time with the right people, for the right people, or for everyone, basically. And I think that's one of the first thing what everyone is saying about paddle is that it's so accessible, it's so easy to learn, and it's so bloody hard to master. Trust
Yeah.
me, I know that. I mean, I'm when I had Mr. Coach Nacho Porto with me, I just said to him that I feel like I know less and less every day I step on court, and that's true. But look, it's different on how you and me play, and it's different on how Coelho plays, and it's different how a
Yeah.
beginner plays. So
That's
that's
it.
that's how it
That's
is.
it. Everybody
Victoria,
have fun.
Victoria, sorry. I absolutely loved every second of this. I wouldn't call it interview. It was just a casual chat, and you're brilliant. Padel Relations is brilliant, and I cannot wait to see you in what a month?
Yeah. Something
Scary. It's a
like this.
month.
Yeah, it's a month and we see each other and we see each other on court, that is as well. So it's going to be
Absolutely.
a selfie from that moment
Oh
happening.
yeah, 100%. It's going out on all the socials, and obviously, thank you very much for coming,
Thanks a lot.
and yeah, I cannot wait to see you.
Thanks a lot for having me, Dennis. I love the project, so couldn't be happier to be here. Thanks a
Thank you.
lot.